Okay, there are some great double-edged knives out there. This, of course, is one of them. This is the outstanding cold steel Taipan Dagger, previously reviewed by me, Nutnfancy, in the project. You'll see the annotation there for it if you would like to review it. Great double-edged blade. Probably one of my favorites, at least production variety. I said as much in the review, and I'll maintain that it's just a design that gets a lot of things right, at least as a double-edged fixed blade fighting knife goes. In summary, it's got that really sharp pommel. And some guy's like, Nutnfancy, why are you wearing gloves? Just cause. Something different. That pommel can serve in both non-lethal and lethal strikes, depending how you employ it. Nice grip. Craton, a lot of traction there. Double guard prevents your hand from going forward in the thrust attack. Really nice blade. Currently made of VG1 steel. I love that steel. I think it's high quality. Adequately rust resistant. Steel that maintains its edge well, in my experience. Hollow ground, so that's going to be a real sharp dagger. It's about as sharp as you can make it. I did touch mine up to make them even sharper. Strong tip. It's got some belly towards the tip that makes it function and maybe some slash cutting rolls as well. And it's not too heavy. Fast in hand, adequately light, strong, and it's got that long grip for a lot of real estate. Cool, love it. As far as daggers goes, it remains one of my favorites, especially that broad blade. I love that broad blade. I know I'm kind of echoing the same thing, same things that I talked about in my review. Sorry, can't help myself. And by broad, I'm talking about the chord or the width of the blade. I think that's going to cut even more deadly, as opposed to maybe a narrower one, kind of like the faribairn type daggers, which are very narrow stiletto-like. But when would you opt for this knife? I mean, is this your primary choice? Let's just say I'm talking to my soldiers now. Soldiers, would this be your primary choice to deploy with? Let me give you some things to think about before I answer to answer the question. Let's roll in some competitors along the lines of single-edged knives. I'm going to bring in this one right here. You've seen it in action up in the woods with Nutnfancy, myself, my friends like Bug and Nuster. This is the Ontario Rat 7. No longer being produced under contract with Randall Knives. Now you're going to find the Randall RC6, RC4. Same type of design. Full flat ground, 1095 steel blade. About 3/16 of an inch thick, or more or less. Great blade. Love it. Let's first talk to the overall utility of both styles of knives. And again, this is stuff I was covering in my Warhead review, but it's got to be broken out separately. I think the single-edged blade is just more useful. It's going to be able to prepare food better, accomplish utility tasks to a much higher level. If you don't think so, just go ahead and slice a loaf of French bread with your double-edged dagger. Can you do it? Yeah, you can do it. You can also ride a bike race on a unicycle. You're not going to finish first, but you can do it. But not really designed for that. Overall, a good Bowie knife or drop point design like the Rat 7 is going to have a lot more utility. Opening crates, if you have to, I mean, I would never recommend it, but if it's the only thing you have, you can dig with it. Maybe that's what you got that day and you need to dig. Hacking, trees apart, splitting wood, huge advantage to knives like these. Even more so if you decide to go something bigger, like the K-Bar heavy Bowie knife. That sucker, as you saw in my Southeastern fire making videos, rocks. It does well. And it won't break the bank either in cost or weight either. So I don't really consider the double-edged dagger a survival knife. I consider it a purpose-built fighting knife. Single-edged blade like the Bowie knife, it can fulfill both functions. I think even the Rat 7 is a good example of the type. It can function very well as a fighting knife, especially with the heft it has. I mean, if you connect in a good swing, talking in a slash cut, it will do some damage. I've proven in my stabbing protocol video that the tip, as long as it's sharp on these drop point blades or modified drop point blades, will pierce adequately. That little Ontario Rat 1 tactical folder I made a spear out of did just that through many layers of cardboard. Amazing. So I wouldn't say it's as good as a dagger, but it definitely will serve the purpose. So don't think you're going to lose much in the pierce cut versus the double edge. That being said, to be fair to the double edge, the tip is sharper and it is more capable. Along with that, though, comes a fair amount of delicateness, doesn't it? Anytime we terminate an edge to such a point, and you can see we've removed a lot of material to do that double bevel grind, you're going to lose some strength. That's just physics. Guys, we can't alter that. As opposed to this knife, and I talk about this in all my videos, how it's going to have more material, it's just single ground, it's going to be a more durable tip. And by the way, your tip is where a lot of your cutting will take place. If you don't think so, just take that knife out of your pocket that you have and look at the tip. Generally speaking, most guys' tips around from this point forward to the tip is going to have a lot of wear, especially on your EDC blades. That's where a lot of your cutting takes place. Advantage single edge design. You can see it's got that nice belly where we can do roll cuts. Maybe it's cutting bread, food preparation, you name it. I've talked to this in other videos. Dagger, not so much. Remember, its primary job or philosophy of use is the thrust cut. As such, most designs really do not have that much belly. If we were to compare these two designs very closely together, it's just an arbitrary comparison. You can see it indeed, the Rat 7's got a lot more belly. And to me, that translates into a much more effective utility cutter. But like I said, this still fights better. But let's be fair to this type as well. Some guys will say, so always go with a single edge? Well, I would say pretty much always, not always, but sometimes a double edge will make sense. Now, this is just me, Nutnfancy, my own philosophy, what I know, and way I'm thinking right now. And like I say on my channel page, my opinions are subject to change as I learn more information, as my experiences continue to teach me, as you guys might share some information that changes the way I look at things. But right now, I think that a broad-bladed dagger like this Taipan or the very affordable and outstanding cold steel warhead, ba-bam! $20 dagger. Yeah, I'll do a separate review on that. I told you that's what I was rolling this into initially. Can really serve the purpose when you are engaged in close combat operations. I've said this in some other review videos, and let me reiterate what I'm talking about. If you are doing house-to-house searches, if you are in combat operations where perhaps you may engage the enemy at very close quarters very suddenly, and I'm talking like within 3 feet or right up in your face, then maybe a broad-bladed dagger is the way you want to go that day. I like broad-bladed because I think they're going to do more damage in the cut, especially this warhead. Look how broad that is. It's like a leaf, double-edged leaf blade. Man, you thrust that in, it will do a lot of damage. We're talking cutting tendons, flesh. I hate to be graphic, but when we're talking about saving your life, or even in survival hunting scenarios, that's what we're talking about. That's what you want. In that respect, the broad-bladed dagger is going to function quite well. One reason I feel that is because a single-edged blade will take some skill and some thought to employ correctly. You might be pinned down on the ground when you access your blade from your tactical loadout gear. As such, as you draw your blade and in the heat of the battle and the extreme stress which you are feeling, by the way, you could be injured. You could have your hand blown off and you only have one hand and you're bringing your blade out to some dude who is on top of you, maybe with his knife. I'm talking to my soldiers here. In that case, a single-edged blade, you just might end up presenting the wrong side to the enemy. Don't say it couldn't happen. All kinds of funky things happen in the fog of war, and that is one of them. I've read stories. And what I'm talking about is you pit that flat edge against the bad guy, expect to do damage, and guess what? You're so stressed and under amazing mental duress, you don't realize that you don't have the striking edge against the adversary. With a double-edged blade, I'm going to roll the warhead in on this one. If you can extract it and employ it and connect with the bad guy in any presentation, you're going to do damage. Dig? Especially if you got that thing razor sharp. And by the way, every fighting blade should be razor sharp. A dull fighting blade is in my opinion, a threat to your life. You want it to be so sharp that it'll cut through heavy clothing, strapping, if we're talking survival use, heavy hides, fur, you name it. And that's where I think a double-edged, broad-bladed dagger could really come into play. Be careful when you do that. I mean, in the heat of the battle, you could very easily cut yourself. Maybe your arm, your thigh is in the way. Just be advised. Another word of caution. For any knife you carry on your loadout system, civilian sheepdogs, military types, I'm talking to you, put it in a consistent place on your tactical vest. Have it where you know it's going to be every time. Consistency is the foundation of good training. I do the same thing the same way every time. That way my old muscles get used to the way I'm going to present my blade or my knife, my handgun, and you don't have to think about it. That's what's going to save your life that dark and dreary day when you pull the blade out. You're not going to have to think, where did I put my knife today? Oh, today I'm carrying it on the left side. Nope. It's on the same place every time. You practice this draw over and over and over again. So it's second nature. If I'm in a theater of war where I'm doing house to house, and I do that every day, in my downtime, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to practice my craft. My craft will be, for lack of a better word, employing lethal force. And you got to be good at it. That's what will save your life. And so we practice, 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 practice. As far as blades go, that's going to be multiple presentations. And so there's a little more POU for you if you use a double-edged blade. And so in those scenarios, I think they can function well. A lot of guys think, well, you know, it's a perfect sentry blade. You know, getting back to the faribairn, Applegate style of fighting. Yeah, but I don't think many of us will ever, you know, employ it in that style of fighting. I think that's more World War II movies than anything. Getting back to utility, though, I still think overall, for my loadout weight and my blade choice on my tactical loadout system, mostly I will go with a single-edged blade. You will see that. You have seen it before. Probably not even one this big. This, to me, is kind of on the larger size of a medium blade along the lines of the K-bar. For me, for an LBE system, I would even go smaller. Something like the Cold Steel SRK or maybe the RC4 would be a good option. And the reason is weight. And also for that POU, and some guys will go, well, Nutnfancy always likes large blades. Well, it depends on my POU. If I'm out in the woods doing survival work, yes, I like the large blades. But you will probably not ever see a K-bar, large K-bar heavy Bowie like this knife attached to my LBE gear. That's stupid. That's because it's too heavy. And I don't need a knife that big in that POU. Something smaller can serve quite well. Maybe a SOG gov-tac. You know? And I got to keep the weight down. If you don't keep the weight down, if you're talking about backpacking, your tactical systems, you're going to wear yourself out. And for guys who have not humped a lot of gear over varying terrain, especially in desert environments, you need to do it. Especially with high humidity. I've done it over in the desert when the humidity level's like tremendously high. 95%, it's 105 degrees out. The air's so thick, it's suffocating. You add 90 pounds to your loadout and you're humping that gear, you're not going to last long. You're drinking lots of water, so your water weight's going to be extremely high. Add in ammunition, rifle plates, depending on what your duty is, you might be wearing rifle plates. That's a lot of weight. So we're not going to take a big old blade. We're going to take a medium size, even a smaller blade. But there it is, advantage of some dagger designs. They are sometimes lighter weight than their single-edge counterparts. This warhead only weighs 9 ounces. That's pretty lightweight for such a big and deadly blade. So, advantage, I'll call that a draw. One thing I didn't talk about, I may have mentioned it, is tip strength. I think I mentioned it with that Taipan. I think it's going to be, if you do a thrust attack, single edge versus double edge, I think most designs, the single edge is going to have a stronger tip. It's going to be a very easy proposition for you to bust a tip off on your double-edged dagger if it hits a hard material. Maybe that's an AK-47 magazine. Maybe it's a rock wall. The hard ground is enough, and once you break that tip off, you're not going to have much thrusting capability with your knife anymore. Couple considerations: single edge versus double edge. So overall, for my weight, I will take a single edge due to the utility with very slight loss in fighting capability. I did mention the fact that in close combat, a dagger could be effective. You'll have to train with it. And yes, I know, single edge, if trained with, very deadly indeed. But remember, fog of war, mental duress, it's going to be real easy to get screwed up. I don't care how proficient or how bad you think you are. It's happened, it'll happen again. Nutnfancy with some considerations. I'm sure I forgot some stuff. I'll annotate it if it's super important. See ya!